She actually said it. Some of us do what we can with what we have, while pointing at my funeral suit, at my own father's funeral. And the worst part? Everyone laughed. Even Mom looked away. But Camille wasn't done. As I stood there, still clutching Dad's program, she patted my arm and purred, "You might want to aim lower if you still hope to marry up, sweetie." I couldn't even speak. I just stared at her stilettos sinking into the cemetery lawn. The same lawn I already owned. She was standing on my property. Every smug plan she had? I'd already bought the ground beneath her heels. And I wasn't finished yet. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Vanessa Kerrigan, and I'm 35 years old. I live in a modest ranch house on Maple Street where my decade-old Honda fits right in with the neighbors' sensible sedans. My sister Camille, the self-proclaimed queen of our family, fills her Instagram with designer unboxing videos and calls my thrift store wardrobe adorably tragic. My financial advisor Marcus Chen helps me maintain my carefully crafted facade of frugality, while my company's $300 million portfolio stays hidden behind layers of blind trusts. Even my housekeeper, Rosa, thinks I'm just another middle-class professional, pinching pennies to get by. When Camille drops by unannounced in her new Mercedes, her diamond rings catching the light as she gestures, my shoulders tense. But I hold my secret close. But let me start from the beginning. Have you ever felt your heart crack? Not from grief alone, but from watching someone turn your pain into their spotlight? That's what happened at my father's funeral last Thursday. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass across Holy Cross Cemetery as mourners gathered under the white funeral tent. I sat in the front row, smoothing my charcoal gray suit, the same one I'd worn to countless business meetings where billions changed hands through my quiet signatures. But today, I was just Dad's younger daughter, fighting back tears as Camille clip-clopped to the podium in stilettos that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Daddy always said presentation matters," Camille began, adjusting her black Chanel dress with its tastefully understated pearl buttons. "He taught us the importance of making an impression, of showing the world your worth." Her voice caught theatrically as she dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Some of us took those lessons to heart more than others. My jaw clenched. Even here, even now, she couldn't resist. I remember when Daddy bought me my first Mercedes for graduation. Camille's smile gleamed as bright as her diamond earrings. He said, "Princess, you deserve the best." And I've lived up to that standard every day since. The eulogy went on. 15 minutes of Camille's greatest hits, featuring Dad as her personal supporting actor. Each time she mentioned his name, it was only to reflect her own glory back at the audience. I could feel Mom shifting uncomfortably beside me, but she stayed silent. We all did. That's what we always did when Camille performed. Then came the kicker. I know some of us couldn't manage to dress appropriately for Daddy's farewell. Camille's gaze locked onto my suit, her lips curving into a practiced smile that wasn't really a smile. But I'm sure he would understand. We all do what we can with what we have. My cheeks burned. The elderly couple behind me whispered something. I forced myself to breathe slowly, steadily, the way I did before closing million-dollar deals. But this wasn't a boardroom. This was my father's funeral, and my sister had just turned it into her personal stage. After the service, as guests filtered toward their cars, Camille cornered me by the cemetery's stone wall. The same wall my company had restored last year through an anonymous donation. "Oh, Van," she sighed, using the nickname I'd always hated. "You really could have made an effort today. I mean, that suit? It looks like it came from..." She wrinkled her nose. "A consignment shop." It was Dad's funeral, Camille, not a fashion show. "Everything's a fashion show, sweetie. You'll figure that out if you ever manage to marry rich." She patted my arm condescendingly. "Though at your age, you might need to lower your standards. Way lower." I said nothing, but my hands had curled into fists inside my pockets. The same hands that had signed the paperwork last month, acquiring 3 city blocks of prime downtown real estate. "Anyway," Camille continued, fishing her phone from her tiny clutch, "I'm in talks to buy Daddy's estate, going to turn it into something fabulous. A legacy property. Show everyone what a Kerrigan can really do with the right vision." She scrolled through her phone, probably checking her social media metrics. "You should come see it when it's done. I'll even give you the family discount if you ever need to rent the guest house." That's when something inside me shifted. Not because of her words. I'd heard worse from her over the years. No, it was because I knew something she didn't. I already owned that land. All of it. I'd bought it through one of my shell companies the moment it hit the market. Camille was standing on my property, in her $1,000 shoes, plotting to build her dreams on my foundation. And she had no idea. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw what I'd been avoiding for years. A woman so desperate to be seen that she'd trample anything, anyone, even our father's memory, to claim her spotlight. I should go, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. I have work tomorrow. Of course you do, Camille laughed, already turning away. Some of us have to work for a living, right? The drive home felt longer than usual. Maybe it was the weight of Dad's funeral still pressing down, or maybe it was Camille's words echoing in my head like a bad song you can't shake. I pulled my Honda into the garage of my modest suburban home, the one Camille loved to call my starter house, even though I'd owned it for 10 years. You know that moment when you're so angry that everything becomes crystal clear? That's where I was. I made my way to my study, the only room in the house that truly reflected who I was. Behind its heavy oak door lay the command center of my empire, though you'd never guess it at first glance. The walls were lined with simple filing cabinets, each containing folders labeled with innocuous names that meant nothing to anyone but me. My fingers traced the spine of a particular folder marked Project Laurel. Inside were the deed and transfer documents for Dad's estate, purchased 3 months ago through one of my most carefully constructed shell companies. The auction had been quick, quiet, and completely anonymous, just the way I liked it. I sank into my leather chair, remembering the day I'd signed those papers. The estate agent had been confused, dealing with a representative who spoke for a company that seemed to exist in layers of legal fog. But money talks, and mine had spoken clearly. Full asking price, cash offer, no conditions. If you're going to hide an empire, Dad used to say during our Sunday chess games, make sure no one can follow the breadcrumbs. He'd been talking about business strategy, but I'd taken those words and built my life around them. Opening my laptop, I pulled up the satellite view of the estate. 12 acres of prime real estate, including the main house where Camille and I had grown up. The property that my dear sister was probably already measuring in her mind, planning her grand showcase without realizing she was standing on someone else's stage. I reached for my secure phone, the one that only my most trusted advisors had the number to, and dialed James, my chief counsel. She took the bait, I said when he answered. Just like you predicted. The estate? His voice was careful, measured. She mentioned it at the funeral? Oh, she did more than mention it. I leaned back, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. She's already planning the renovation, talking about legacy properties and family discounts. And she has no idea you're the owner? Not a clue. I opened another folder, this one containing printouts of Camille's recent social media posts, all carefully curated images of her perfect life. She's so focused on her own reflection, she never bothered to look behind the mirror. Remember how I said everything becomes crystal clear when you're angry enough? Well, sitting there in my study, surrounded by the paper trail of my carefully hidden success, I saw the path forward with perfect clarity. James, I said, remember that contingency plan we discussed? The one with the graduated pressure points? The 3-phase approach? Yes. He paused. Are you sure you want to implement that? It's comprehensive. I thought about Camille's smirk at the funeral, about how she'd turned our father's memorial into her personal spotlight, about all those years of little cuts and condescending comments, each one delivered with a smile and a designer purse on her arm. Yes, I said, pulling out a fresh legal pad, but with some modifications. I want this done right. Clean. Perfect. It will take time, James cautioned. Months, maybe longer, to execute without revealing your hand. Time, I said, is something I have plenty of. I began writing, each point a stepping stone in what would become Camille's education in humility. She wants to build something impressive? Let's see how she handles watching her dreams crumble. One permit denial at a time. The study grew darker as evening settled in, but I barely noticed. I was too busy mapping out the details, strategic blocks through zoning boards, carefully timed competitor bids, subtle pressure applied through seemingly unconnected channels. Each move designed to be untraceable, each setback appearing completely natural. One more thing, I told James before hanging up. Make sure every document, every transaction, every single piece of paper is absolutely bulletproof. When this is done, I want there to be no question about who really owns what. A week after the funeral, I sat in my home office watching my laptop screen refresh every few minutes. I'd set up alerts for any development proposals filed in our district, and right on schedule, there it was. Camille's ambitious plan for the Kerrigan Legacy Estate. The proposal was exactly what I'd expected: glossy renderings of a modernized mansion, complete with a wine cellar and exclusive entrepreneurship spaces. Classic Camille. All show, no substance. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I picked up my secure phone and called Marla. "It's here," I said. "Time for phase 1. "I've already reviewed it," Marla replied, her voice carrying that familiar note of precise satisfaction. "The zoning board will find at least 6 violations by tomorrow morning. Do you want the full list?" "Give me the highlights." I opened my own copy of the proposal, noting how Camille had signed her name with that flourishing K she'd practiced since high school. Well, for starters, her planned expansion exceeds current residential limits by 30%. Then there's the matter of historical preservation codes, which, by the way, your father's estate falls under thanks to that quiet designation we secured last month. I smiled, remembering how I'd funded that historical society initiative through 3 different charitable trusts. What else? Environmental impact studies she hasn't done, setback requirements she's ignored, and my personal favorite, she's proposing commercial usage in a strictly residential zone. Perfect! I leaned back in my chair, thinking of the chess games Dad used to teach us. Camille had always rushed her moves, too eager to take pieces to see the trap being set. Make sure the rejection comes through standard channels. Nothing that could trace back to us. 3 days later, Camille's proposal was denied. I watched through my network of carefully placed contacts as she stormed into the zoning office, demanding explanations. The clerk, who had no idea he was part of a larger game, simply pointed to the regulations and shrugged. That's when Camille did exactly what I knew she would. She started looking at the surrounding properties. But I was already there, my shell companies moving with quiet efficiency. Every lot she inquired about had mysteriously sold just days before, always to different buyers, always at prices she couldn't hope to match. Another property just went under contract, my real estate agent reported. Your sister's broker called 10 minutes too late. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. What's our total investment in the surrounding parcels now? Just crossed $8 million. All purchased through separate LLCs, all with different attorneys and agents. Nobody could connect the dots unless they knew exactly what to look for. Remember those moments when you know you should feel guilty but you just don't? This was one of them. I opened my banking app and authorized another transfer, 7 figures sliding silently from one hidden account to another. That evening, my cousin Rachel called. "Vanessa, you won't believe what Camille's been saying." She sounded both amused and concerned. "She's convinced someone's out to get her. Says there's some mysterious buyer blocking her at every turn." I kept my voice carefully neutral. "Oh? That sounds frustrating for her. She's losing it. Spent an hour ranting about how she can't even get basic permits approved. Says someone must have connections in the city offices. How unfortunate." I glanced at my chessboard, the one Dad gave me for my 16th birthday. I'd been recreating our old games lately, remembering his lessons about patience and position. "I'm sure it's just bad luck." "Maybe," Rachel said. "But you should see her face when she talks about it. I've never seen her so rattled." After we hung up, I walked to my window overlooking the city lights. Somewhere out there, Camille was probably pacing in her designer heels, trying to understand why her perfect plan was falling apart. She didn't realize she was playing a game she'd already lost, one that started the moment she decided to mock me at our father's funeral. My phone buzzed with a text from Marla. "Next phase ready when you are." I typed back a single word. "Proceed." My morning coffee ritual was interrupted by Camille's latest press release hitting the local news sites. There it was, splashed across my tablet screen. Rising Star Developer partners with award-winning designer. I almost choked on my espresso when I saw who she'd hired. Elena Martinez, the same designer I'd been quietly watching for months. You know that moment when coincidence feels like destiny? This was better than coincidence. This was opportunity. I speed-dialed Marla. "Have you seen it?" "Already drafting the offer letter," she replied, that subtle smugness in her voice telling me she was 2 steps ahead. "Elena Martinez's contract with your sister has a standard 30-day exit clause. Want to guess how much Camille's paying her?" "Knowing Camille? Whatever the market rate is plus 10% to stroke her ego." "Close. Plus 15. We're going in at double, with a guaranteed 3-year minimum and creative control of the whole project. I sipped my coffee, remembering how Camille used to rearrange my childhood bedroom without asking, always insisting she knew better. Make sure Elena understands she'll have complete artistic freedom. Camille probably has her on a short leash. 2 weeks later, I watched through my network as Elena walked into Camille's office. The resignation letter was short, professional, and absolutely devastating. My contact in Camille's office, an assistant who had no idea who really signed her bonus checks, texted me the play-by-play. "Your sister just threw a crystal paperweight at the wall," she wrote. Elena didn't even flinch. Just said something about a better opportunity and walked out. I could picture it perfectly. Camille's carefully maintained facade cracking, that mask of control slipping just enough to show the desperation underneath. The next day, she tried to spin it in the press, some vague statement about creative differences. But anyone who mattered in real estate circles knew the truth. Elena Martinez, the designer everyone wanted, had dumped Camille Kerrigan-Wells for a mysterious new client. That's when I set the next piece in motion. "Rachel," I said into my phone, keeping my voice casual during our weekly catch-up call. "You mentioned Camille's been stressed lately?" "God, yes," my cousin sighed. "She's practically living on anxiety meds since that designer disaster." "Why?" "Well, I heard about this exclusive thing happening next month. Some kind of luxury real estate brunch. Very hush-hush, invitation only. Thought she might be interested." Rachel's voice perked up. "The Morrison Estate preview? That's like the holy grail of social events this season. Nobody even knows where it is yet." I smiled, thinking of the carefully orchestrated event my team had been planning for weeks. "Maybe you could mention it to her, just casually." 3 days later, right on schedule, Camille called Rachel in a frenzy. I didn't need to be there to know exactly how it went. Rachel later told me every detail. How Camille practically begged for help getting an invitation. How she promised anything, everything, just to be included. "She's completely obsessed," Rachel reported. "Says this could save her whole project. All those mystery buyers might be there, and she thinks she can convince them to work with her instead of against her." "Interesting theory," I said, signing the final approval for the invitations. They were works of art, heavy cream cardstock with gold leaf edges, each one personally addressed. Camille's would arrive tomorrow, complete with a handwritten note suggesting her unique vision had caught someone's attention. "I don't know how you did it," Rachel said, "but thank you for helping me get her that invite. Maybe it'll help her calm down a little." I thought about the estate where the brunch would be held. My estate, though no one knew that yet. About the carefully curated guest list, the strategic seating arrangements, and the moment Camille would walk in, thinking she'd finally reached the inner circle. "Let's hope so," I said, and meant it. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about letting them destroy themselves. The next morning, my assistant confirmed that Camille's invitation had been delivered. Within minutes, social media lit up with her posts. Subtle hints about exclusive events and career-changing opportunities. Each one was perfectly crafted to make her followers envious while revealing absolutely nothing. She had no idea she was walking into a trap of her own making. But then again, that's the thing about karma. It works best when you let people think they're getting exactly what they want. I stood in my private office watching the security feeds as guests arrived for the brunch. The morning sun caught the estate's floor-to-ceiling windows perfectly, making the modern architecture gleam like a jewel against the manicured grounds. You know that feeling when you've set up the perfect surprise and you're just waiting for the right moment? That was me, trying not to smile too obviously. Camille's white Range Rover pulled up exactly 20 minutes early. Classic her, always wanting to be first. She stepped out wearing what I recognized as a new Valentino dress, probably bought just for this occasion. The champagne-colored fabric probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Ms. Kerrigan-Wells has arrived," my assistant Sophie texted. "She's already commenting on the fountain design." I watched through the cameras as Camille worked the room like it was her personal stage. The grand foyer with its spiral staircase, the contemporary art I'd carefully selected, the views of the infinity pool, she practically swooned over every detail. If she only knew who had chosen each piece. "This marble," I heard her gush through the audio feed. "It's absolutely divine. Exactly what I envisioned for my upcoming project." The upcoming project she couldn't stop mentioning was, of course, our father's estate, the one she still thought she was going to buy. I'd positioned key members of my team throughout the room. Elena, My newly acquired interior designer, Marcus from acquisitions, even Rachel, though she didn't know her real role yet. Tell me more about this development you're planning, Elena prompted right on cue, hiding a knowing smile behind her mimosa. Well, Camille preened, it's going to redefine luxury living in this area. I'm thinking clean lines, museum quality finishes. She gestured around the room. Actually, quite similar to this estate, though perhaps with an even grander vision. I checked my watch. Almost time. Through the feeds, I watched Camille hold court near the main windows, champagne flute in hand, surrounded by my carefully placed employees. The morning light caught her platinum hair like a spotlight. Always center stage, my sister. A toast, she was saying, raising her glass, to new beginnings and legacy properties. The small crowd played along, lifting their glasses. You know, when this estate's owner finally reveals themselves, they'll find we have so much in common. I just know, Will. That was my cue. I straightened my simple black blazer, thrifted, of course, though now I wore it by choice rather than necessity, and opened the office door. My heels clicked softly on the marble floors as I made my way down the hall. 2 security guards nodded respectfully as they opened the main doors to the gathering space. The hush that fell over the room was absolute. I heard a sharp intake of breath, Camille recognizing me. Her champagne glass trembled slightly, sending ripples through the golden liquid. The look on her face. Well, imagine someone seeing a ghost, but the ghost is wearing discount store shoes and owns everything you've just been bragging about. What are you doing here? Camille stammered, her perfectly made-up face draining of color. The glass shook more noticeably in her manicured hand. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I let my eyes sweep the room slowly, acknowledging each of my employees with the smallest nod. Elena, Marcus, the others. Their faces remained carefully neutral, professional. We'd rehearsed this moment after all. Camille's gaze darted between them and me, realization starting to dawn. The champagne in her glass sloshed dangerously close to the rim. Behind her, through those massive windows, I could see her Range Rover parked right where I'd known it would be, in the exact spot I'd chosen months ago when designing this whole scene. The silence stretched out, thick as honey. Camille's free hand clutched at her designer dress, crumpling the expensive fabric. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For once in her life, my sister was speechless. Remember how I said some laughs cost more than they're worth? Well, sometimes silence is worth more than any amount of money. And right then, watching Camille's carefully constructed world tilt on its axis, that silence was absolutely priceless. I'd barely made it home when my phone started buzzing. First came the texts from family members, confused, concerned, demanding explanations. Then the emails started flooding in. Camille had been busy. How dare she pretend to be something she's not? Camille's message to our extended circle practically screamed off the screen. My own sister, living some pathetic double life, stealing my ideas, my contacts. The capital letters kept coming, along with wild accusations about fraud and deception. I kicked off my heels and settled into my favorite reading chair, the one I'd rescued from a vintage shop years ago. The worn leather still smelled faintly of history and wisdom, reminding me of quiet Sunday afternoons spent plotting my empire while others chased Instagram likes. "She's lost it," my cousin Janet texted. "Check your email. She's copying everyone." I already had. Camille's manifesto ran for 3 pages, each paragraph more unhinged than the last. She'd managed to twist every detail of my success into some elaborate conspiracy against her. According to her version, I'd manipulated my way into ownership of Dad's estate, sabotaged her business relationships, and deceived our social circle. My phone rang. It was Marla, my attorney. "Your sister's lawyers just contacted us," she said without preamble. "They're filing a defamation suit first thing tomorrow morning, claiming you've deliberately damaged her reputation and business prospects." My fingers traced the chair's worn armrest. Let me guess. She wants it fast-tracked? 30 days. She's pushing for maximum publicity. Marla paused. "This could get messy, Vanessa." I smiled, thinking of the precisely organized files in my study. Actually, it's about to get very, very clean. After hanging up, I walked to my home office. The room looked ordinary enough. Simple desk, basic filing cabinets, that promotional calendar from the local coffee shop. But behind the wooden panels, that's where I kept the real story. I pressed the hidden latch, and the wall section swung open. Inside, organized in chronological order, was every document, every contract, every piece of correspondence that had built my empire. More importantly, I had records of every interaction with Camille over the years, including her mockery, her attempts to undermine me, and her recent scramble to claim Dad's estate. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Sophie. "Ms. Kerrigan, the PR team is asking how to handle the incoming press inquiries. Your sister's people are already spinning this." "Tell them to wait," I replied. "The truth doesn't need spin." I pulled out the first folder, dated 15 years ago, when I'd started buying properties under my first shell company. Every transaction was legal, every permit obtained properly, every tax paid on time. I had witnesses, documentation, and an ironclad paper trail showing how I'd built everything from scratch while Camille was busy building Instagram followers. The next few hours passed in focused preparation. I organized evidence chronologically, flagging key documents that showed my legitimate ownership and Camille's recent attempts to claim properties she had no rights to. My team sent over screenshots of her social media posts. All those boasts about developments she didn't own, deals she hadn't closed. Near midnight, Marla sent over the preliminary court filing. Camille wanted a public hearing, complete with media access. She probably imagined herself delivering another dramatic performance like at Dad's funeral. But this time, the spotlight wouldn't work in her favor. I drafted a simple response to the family email chain. "The truth will speak for itself. See you in court." Then I opened my laptop and began typing detailed instructions to my legal team. Camille wanted theater? Fine. But this show would have receipts. My phone lit up one last time. A text from Elena, the interior designer. "Your sister just called me, screaming about betrayal and threatening to blacklist me. Should I be worried?" "Not at all," I wrote back. "In 30 days, she won't be blacklisting anyone." I looked at the calendar, circling the court date in red. 30 days. After 15 years of quiet building, 30 days seemed like nothing. Camille thought she was forcing my hand, making me defend myself. She had no idea she was walking into the revelation I'd been planning all along. The grandfather clock in the hallway, another vintage rescue, chimed midnight. Somewhere across town, Camille was probably pacing in her designer heels, rehearsing her courtroom speech. Let her practice. I had something better than speeches. I had proof. The headline made my coffee taste bitter. "Socialite claims sister's empire built on lies." There was Camille, perfectly posed in her penthouse, playing the wounded bird for the Daily Register. She'd even managed to squeeze out a tear for the photographer. "It's devastating," she was quoted saying. "My own sister, stealing my vision for our father's legacy property, using shell companies to hide her tracks. The whole thing reeks of fraud." My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the article dropped. I switched it to silent and spread the newspaper across my kitchen table, the same scratched pine one I'd bought at a yard sale years ago. You know those moments when your carefully built world starts to wobble? This was one of them. Sophie called on my landline, the only number still accepting calls. "Ms. Kerrigan, we need to discuss damage control. Camille's team is pushing hard on the fraud angle." I glanced at my reflection in the window. Same sensible haircut, same thrifted blazer. Nothing about me screamed corporate titan, and maybe that was part of the problem. Set up a meeting, full team. 2 hours later, I sat in Marla's office downtown, surrounded by my core advisors. The view through her floor-to-ceiling windows usually calmed me, but not today. My leg wouldn't stop bouncing under the conference table. "They're claiming all your documentation is fabricated," Marla said, sliding a legal brief across the polished surface. Her attorney just leaked this to 3 major outlets. The paper trembled slightly in my hands. 15 years of careful building, and Camille was trying to tear it down with a few well-placed sound bites. "Every transaction is legitimate," I said. But my voice sounded thin even to me. "We have the records." "Records can be questioned," Sophie pointed out, especially when the other side is feeding a juicy narrative about corporate espionage and family betrayal. I closed my eyes, remembering all those nights spent building my empire in silence. The careful paper trails, the triple-checked permits, the legitimate transfers through vetted banks. But doubt crept in like smoke under a door. What if one detail was off? What if one document wasn't perfect? My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my cousin Rachel. "Did you really fake everything? Camille's showing people proof." That's when my old mentor Janet called. I stepped into the hallway to take it. I saw the headlines, she said without preamble. Remember what I taught you? The memory hit me like a wave. Janet in her corner office 20 years ago, showing me how to document every business move. The truth is bulletproof when documented, I quoted back to her. Exactly. And you documented everything, didn't you? Every single step. Then let them dig. Truth doesn't mind being investigated. After hanging up, I walked back into the conference room with steadier steps. But that night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in my bedroom, the smallest room in my modest house, staring at shadows on the ceiling. Somewhere across town, Camille was probably planning her next media hit. The next morning brought fresh attacks. Camille's attorney had released a statement questioning the timing of my property acquisitions. Online comments called me a fraud, a thief, a manipulator. My carefully maintained privacy now looked suspicious to outsiders who didn't understand why a wealthy woman would choose to live simply. I drove to the office in my old Honda, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every stoplight felt like an eternity. 28 days until court. 28 days of Camille's team spinning stories, digging through my past, trying to find cracks that didn't exist. That afternoon, I met with the forensic accountants who'd verified my records. We need to go through everything again, I told them. Every transaction, every date, every signature. Hours blurred into each other as we combed through 15 years of business records. My eyes burned from staring at documents. Coffee grew cold in my mug. Outside my office windows, the sky darkened, then lightened again. The truth was in these papers. But Camille had the media's ear, and she was singing her victim song perfectly. Each new headline felt like a brick on my chest. Each questioning text from family members twisted the knife deeper. I hadn't built this empire for recognition. But now, with my integrity under attack, the weight of staying silent felt heavier than ever. I hadn't opened the old storage box in years. But there I was, cross-legged on my living room floor at midnight, dust making my eyes water as I pulled out crackling VHS tapes. Or maybe it wasn't just the dust making my eyes sting. The first video flickered to life. Christmas 1992. Camille, 12 years old, showing off her new designer coat while I hung back in my clearance rack sweater. Even then, the pattern was set. "Look, Daddy," young Camille twirled. "I'm going to be just like those ladies in your magazines." Dad's voice behind the camera. "That's my girl, always dressed for success." My throat tightened. I fast-forwarded through birthdays, graduations, family vacations, each one a highlight reel of Camille commanding attention while I faded into the background. The familiar ache spread through my chest. My phone buzzed, another news alert. Kerrigan's sister scandal. Deepens. Sources question empire's origins. I clicked it off, but not before seeing Camille's latest quote. "My sister's sudden wealth raises serious concerns. Our father taught us about honest business." The irony made me laugh until I was crying. Or maybe I was already crying. I switched off the TV, plunging the room into darkness. That's when Tasha called. "I'm picking you up in 20 minutes, she said, her voice brooking no argument. "Put on real clothes." "Tasha, I can't." 20 minutes. And I know you're sitting in the dark watching old videos. I looked guiltily at the scattered tapes. "How did you—" "Because I know you. And because that's exactly what I did when my sister tried to tank my first business. Now move." 40 minutes later, we sat in a back booth at Mario's, the same little Italian place where I'd first mentored Tasha 10 years ago. Back then, she was a struggling boutique owner fighting to keep her doors open. Now she owned a thriving chain of stores. "Remember what you told me?" she asked, pouring more wine. "When my sister was telling everyone I'd stolen her startup idea?" I shook my head. "You said, 'Let them talk. Numbers don't lie, and neither do receipts.'" Tasha leaned forward. "You made me pull out every invoice, every bank statement. You showed me how to build a paper fortress that no one could tear down." The memory surfaced slowly. Tasha's tears, her sister's accusations, the late nights documenting everything. "And you know what else you taught me?" She reached across the table, gripping my hand. "You taught me to hold the line, to trust the truth, even when the lies are louder." Something in my chest loosened. I remembered that younger version of myself, so certain, so clear about right and wrong. "I've been watching you fade these past few days," Tasha continued. "That's not the woman who showed me how to fight smart. That's not the woman who built an empire in silence." "Maybe I was wrong," I whispered. to keep it all hidden for so long. Wrong. Girl, you're about to give the performance of a lifetime. But first, she signaled the waiter. We're getting tiramisu. Because sugar helps with strategy. Over dessert, Tasha listened as I outlined my evidence. Every property acquisition, every shell company, every perfectly legal move I'd made while Camille was busy chasing headlines. See? Tasha's eyes sparked. There's my mentor, the one who taught me that the best revenge isn't just success, it's documented success. By the time we left Mario's, the knot in my stomach had dissolved. The weight of those childhood videos lifted. This wasn't about old family wounds anymore. This was about truth. Back home, I spread my evidence packets across the dining room table. 15 years of meticulous records. Every permit, every deed, every bank transfer. A paper trail that would make an auditor weep with joy. My phone buzzed with another news alert, but this time I didn't flinch. Let Camille's PR machine spin. Let her team dig. They wouldn't find what they wanted because I'd never done what they claimed. I thought of Tasha's words. Hold the line. That's exactly what I planned to do. The courtroom wasn't just a legal venue anymore. It was my stage. And unlike Camille, I didn't need designer labels or media spin to make an impact. I had something better. I had proof. I smoothed my simple navy suit, the same one Camille had mocked at Dad's funeral, and pushed through the courthouse doors. No cameras, no entourage, just me, my legal team, and 15 years of receipts. The whispers started before I'd even taken my seat. Camille had orchestrated quite the entrance, a cluster of reporters trailing her Louboutins as she practically floated to the plaintiff's table. Her Chanel suit probably cost more than my first car. Remember how Mom used to dress us as twins for Easter? Pink ruffles and matching bows, until Camille threw a fit about sharing the spotlight. Some things never change. Judge Martinez entered, and the gallery rustled to attention. I kept my eyes forward as Camille's attorney launched into his opening statement, all dramatic pauses and vague accusations about systematic deception and familial betrayal. Your Honor, he declared, we will prove that the defendant orchestrated a calculated campaign to undermine my client's business ventures through fraudulent means. My shoulders tensed, but I remembered Tasha's words. Hold the line. Camille's lawyer went on about how I'd suddenly acquired massive wealth, implying money laundering and corporate theft. With each allegation, Camille nodded earnestly, playing the wounded sister perfectly. I had to admire her commitment to the performance. Judge Martinez's expression grew increasingly skeptical. She interrupted Camille's attorney mid-flourish. Counselor, these are serious accusations. I assume you have concrete evidence? We have multiple witnesses who will testify. Witnesses to what, specifically? The judge's tone could have frozen coffee. That's when my attorney, Helen Chen, stood. No theatrics, just quiet confidence. Your Honor, if I may, we can save the court considerable time. Helen nodded to her assistant, who began distributing thick binders to the court clerk and opposing counsel. The sound of papers shuffling filled the courtroom. What we've provided, Helen continued, is a complete financial disclosure of my client's business holdings, beginning in 2008. Every property acquisition, every corporate filing, every tax return. You'll note that all documents have been independently verified by 3 separate accounting firms. Camille's perfect posture faltered slightly. Additionally, Helen said, we've included a detailed timeline demonstrating that Ms. Kerrigan-Wells was never once misled about any business transaction. In fact, she paused to reference a specific page. The property she claims was stolen from her was purchased at public auction, with full documentation, 6 months before she expressed any interest in it. The judge began reviewing the materials, her eyebrows rising steadily. This is quite comprehensive. Page 37, Your Honor, Helen continued, shows the complete corporate structure of my client's holdings, current verified net worth, $312 million accumulated through entirely legitimate means over 15 years. A gasp rippled through the gallery. Camille's attorney frantically flipped through pages. Furthermore, Helen added, we've included proof that my client's anonymous business practices were established years before any interaction with the plaintiff. Bank records, incorporation documents, and board meeting minutes all confirm this timeline. I finally allowed myself to look at Camille. Her perfectly made-up face had gone pale, her manicured fingers gripping the table edge. Your Honor, Camille's lawyer stammered, we request time to review these documents. Of course, Judge Martinez replied. Though I must say, Mr. Patterson, these records appear to directly contradict your opening claims. She turned to Helen. Counselor, please continue. Helen projected a series of property deeds onto the courtroom screen. As you can see, each acquisition was conducted through proper channels with full legal documentation. The plaintiff's claim of corporate theft is demonstrably false. The whispers in the gallery grew louder. I caught fragments. 300 million. All this time, Camille never knew. Judge Martinez held up her hand for silence. I've seen enough for today. We'll adjourn until tomorrow morning to allow the plaintiff's counsel to review these materials. She fixed Camille's lawyer with a stern look. I strongly suggest you reassess your position before we reconvene. As the gallery began to empty, I gathered my belongings calmly. Cameras flashed outside the courtroom doors, Camille's media circus waiting for their show. But the story they'd get wouldn't be the one she'd promised them. A young clerk caught my eye as I passed, then quickly looked down at the financial documents in her hands. The whispers followed me down the corridor. That's her, the silent billionaire. The morning after the court revelation, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I silenced it and sat in my study, watching the media circus unfold on my laptop screen. You know that moment when karma finally catches up? This was it, playing out in high definition. First came the Instagram announcement from Valentino's PR team. In light of recent events, we are suspending our relationship with Ms. Kerrigan Wells. The post accumulated likes faster than Camille could delete her angry comments. Remember those society magazines Camille used to pose for? They turned on her like sharks scenting blood. Secret billionaire sister exposes social climber's scheme, screamed one headline. Courtroom collapse, how the other sister built an empire in silence, declared another. Every outlet that had once fawned over Camille's exclusive lifestyle tips now gleefully detailed her humiliation. My assistant forwarded me an email from Grant's publicity team. His statement was a masterpiece of calculated abandonment. In view of troubling revelations regarding Ms. Kerrigan Wells' business practices and personal conduct, I am terminating our engagement. My reputation as a financial advisor requires absolute transparency. I almost felt sorry for Camille. Almost. The memory of Dad's funeral, her mockery, her cruel jabs, kept my sympathy in check. Mid-morning, my lawyer called. The plaintiff's team is withdrawing the case, Helen reported, satisfaction evident in her voice. They're citing integrity concerns, basically admitting they had nothing. How's Camille taking it? Her attorney practically ran from the courthouse. She's been calling every PR firm in the city, but no one will touch her case. The evidence was too clear, too public. I thanked Helen and hung up, then walked to my window. Outside, spring flowers were pushing through the soil, persistent little things, growing quietly until they were ready to bloom. Kind of like me, I suppose. The courier arrived at noon with a certified letter from the Family Foundation's board of directors. I knew what it contained before breaking the seal. The language was formal, but the message was clear. Following recent events and a unanimous board vote, Camille had been removed as co-trustee. I was now the sole custodian of our family's charitable legacy. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from my old mentor, Sandra. Saw the news. Remember what I taught you? True power whispers. That hit home. I thought about all the years I'd spent building in silence, letting Camille's taunts roll off my back while I focused on what mattered. Each property acquired, each deal closed, each investment grown, all without fanfare or social media posts. The afternoon news cycle brought fresh updates. Camille's favorite country club had regretfully suspended her membership. 3 charity boards requested her voluntary resignation. Her interior design showcase was postponed indefinitely. The society world she'd fought so hard to conquer was systematically erasing her. A notification popped up on my screen. Someone had leaked security footage from the courthouse parking lot. There was Camille, mascara streaked, trying to dodge reporters while her designer heel snapped on the pavement. The same heel she'd used to literally look down on me at Dad's funeral. I closed my laptop. This wasn't about celebration. Sitting in my quiet study, surrounded by the documents and deals that built my empire, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not the fierce satisfaction I'd imagined, but a calm certainty that justice had simply run its course. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my desk, highlighting the Family Foundation's letter. Dad had always said the foundation was about quiet impact, not public glory. Camille never understood that. She'd treated it like another social trophy, another chance to see her name in gold letters. I picked up the foundation letter again, running my fingers over the embossed letterhead. Power, real power, doesn't need to shout. It builds. It grows. It changes things from the ground up. Just like those spring flowers outside my window, pushing through the soil one determined inch at a time. My intercom buzzed. Ms. Kerrigan? The foundation board is ready for your call. I straightened my simple blazer, the same one Camille once mocked as clearance rack chic, and reached for my phone. Time to get back to work. After all, real empires aren't built on headlines. 3 months after the courthouse drama, I stood on the edge of what used to be Dad's estate, watching the morning fog lift. Spring had arrived almost overnight, painting the surrounding trees with delicate green buds. The land stretched before me, cleared and graded, ready for its new purpose. You know that feeling when a long-held dream finally becomes real? When all those quiet years of planning suddenly take physical form? My hands trembled slightly as I unrolled the blueprints, though the morning wasn't particularly cold. The construction crew was already assembling, trucks rolling in, equipment being positioned, hard hats gathering for the morning briefing. My project manager, Rachel, walked over with 2 coffee cups, handing me one. "Big day," she said, studying the plans spread across the portable table. "You sure you don't want to do a formal groundbreaking ceremony? Press would be all over it." I shook my head, sipping the coffee. That's not what this is about. The plans laid out before us showed something far different from Camille's imagined legacy mansion. Instead of marble fountains and Instagram-worthy ballrooms, these drawings detailed classroom spaces, conference facilities, and incubator offices. The Kerrigan Center for Women Entrepreneurs, a place where other quiet builders could learn, grow, and support each other. "Ms. Kerrigan?" One of the site supervisors approached. "We're ready to begin whenever you give the word." I nodded, rolling up the blueprints. The morning sun had burned away the last wisps of fog, illuminating the construction site sign at the entrance. Below the standard safety warnings and permit numbers was a name I'd kept hidden for so long. Mine. A memory flickered. Camille standing in this same spot months ago, describing her vision of crystal chandeliers and society galas. Now her social media account sat dormant, her circle of influencers and socialites suddenly too busy to return calls. The last I'd heard, she'd retreated to a distant cousin's guest house, her designer wardrobe packed in storage. The rumble of earth-moving equipment snapped me back to the present. Rachel touched my arm, gesturing toward a worker approaching with something wrapped in cloth. "Traditional first dig ceremony," she explained. The crew insisted. The worker, Jim, according to his hard hat, carefully unwrapped the bundle. There, gleaming in the morning light, was a ceremonial groundbreaking spade. But this wasn't the usual polished shovel. The handle and blade were cast in solid gold, elegant but understated, with 3 words engraved along the shaft. "Build, don't brag." The crew took up a collection, Jim said, his weathered face proud. "We've worked on plenty of vanity projects, but this means something." My throat tightened as I took the spade. It was heavier than it looked, solid and real, like the truth finally coming to light. A small group had gathered. The construction crew, my core team, even a few early morning dog walkers who'd stopped to watch. Someone from the local paper stood at the periphery, camera ready. I'd declined all the major network interviews, the magazine profiles, the exclusive tell-alls. But this quiet moment? This felt right. The ground was soft from recent rains as I positioned the spade. Spring earth, ready for new beginnings. Behind me, I heard the low murmur of voices, the steady idle of construction engines, the morning birds claiming their territory. I thought about all the women who would walk through these doors someday. Women with dreams bigger than their bank accounts, with ideas too important to waste on showing off. Women who, like me, understood that real power grows in silence until it's ready to bloom. The golden spade sank into the earth with a satisfying weight. As I turned over that first spadeful of soil, I didn't feel triumph or vindication. Instead, I felt something quieter, stronger. The simple rightness of actions matching words, of promises kept, of truth finally standing in sunlight. Rachel stepped forward with the building permits while the crew moved into position. Soon the real work would begin, foundations to pour, walls to raise, futures to build. The reporter edged closer, notebook in hand, but I just smiled and shook my head. The story wasn't in my words. It was in the blueprints, the golden spade, and the name on the sign. Silent no more. 6 months flew by like a dream. The morning of the center's opening, I stood at my office window, watching the sunrise paint the new building in shades of amber and gold. Remember those moments when everything feels both surreal and absolutely right? This was one of them. My phone buzzed. Rachel, as usual, 3 steps ahead. Local news vans are setting up. You ready? I smoothed my blazer, a tailored charcoal piece that would have made the old me gasp at the price tag. But some occasions deserve the investment. On my way. The parking lot was already filling up when I arrived. Young women in business attire clustered near the entrance, their excitement visible even from a distance. These were our first cohort of entrepreneurs in training, 25 carefully selected visionaries who reminded me of myself a decade ago. Hungry for knowledge, not attention. The golden spade caught the morning light from its permanent mount beside the main doors. We'd positioned it there deliberately, a reminder to everyone who entered that true success grows from substance, not show. The plaque beneath it, simple yet striking, build, don't brag. Every time I passed it, I thought of Camille's mansion plans, now just ghost blueprints gathering dust somewhere. 5 minutes! Rachel appeared at my elbow, clipboard in hand. The mayor's here and heads up. Channel 4 wants an exclusive after the ceremony. I nodded, scanning the growing crowd. Familiar faces everywhere. Contractors who'd worked through winter storms to finish on time, mentors who'd signed on to teach, even a few of my anonymous business partners who'd finally learned my identity during the trial. But one face was notably absent. Camille hadn't been seen in public since the courthouse steps. The podium waited, draped with a royal blue banner bearing our new logo. Behind it stretched a red ribbon, ready for its ceremonial cut. Someone had arranged fresh flowers in massive urns on either side. Elegant but not showy, exactly the tone we'd aimed for. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor began her introduction. We're here to celebrate more than just a building. My mind drifted to the classrooms upstairs, already set up with state-of-the-art technology, to the incubator spaces where dreams would take their first practical steps, to the conference room named after my father, because despite everything, he'd taught me the value of quiet persistence. A burst of applause snapped me back to the moment. My cue. The walk to the podium felt like floating. Camera shutters clicked rapid fire, but I barely noticed. This wasn't about the photos or headlines. This was about the legacy that mattered. Not one built on marble and mirrors, but on mentorship and merit. Welcome, I began, my voice steady despite the emotion tightening my throat. Welcome to a place where actions speak louder than accessories, where substance outshines status, and where every woman can learn to build her empire, whether anyone else sees it coming or not. The crowd laughed knowingly. By now, my story had become something of a local legend. After the speech and ribbon cutting, as the guests streamed inside for tours, a reporter caught my eye. She was younger than the others, notebook clutched like a lifeline. Ms. Kerrigan? She stepped forward. Everyone's wondering, do you have any final thoughts on your sister's situation? Any comment on her downfall? I paused, considering. Through the windows, I could see our first group of entrepreneurs exploring their new home, their energy, their potential, their unwritten stories. That's what mattered now. Looking directly into her camera lens, I smiled. Let them laugh first, then outlast them. The young reporter's eyes widened as she scribbled frantically. But I was already turning away, heading toward the entrance where Rachel waited with our first class of future builders. Behind me, the golden spade caught the morning sun, casting a warm glow over the words that had become more than just a motto. They were a mission. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.